Hello, this is Matthew with Simplilearn, and today we're going to go through Express.js and how that is part of the Node.js family of tools. So there's two key areas that I want to cover in this presentation, and then we'll do a demo. The first is what is Express.js and why would you use it? And then the second is to step through all the features of Express.js, including a sample script that you would write. And then finally, doing a demo so you can actually see some of the common features that you would use in setting up an Express.js environment. In fact, what you'll see is how quickly you can get up and running with Express.js. So let's kind of jump into the Express.js framework. So Express.js is a really flexible Node.js and web application framework. It is just something you can spin up very quickly and build both web and mobile applications. Just a really great tool. I use it all the time for building up my own applications. The thing that's so great about it is it's really simple, so it's not going to be have all the functionality that you'd have in maybe a larger scale HTTP service. But with that said, it does come with a lot of functionality that allows you to not only create websites, but you can also do APIs and other routing calls. Very, very nice. So let's go through some of the features that Express.js have. So as I mentioned before, it allows you to build simple web applications, and that can be either a single page application or a multi-page application. It also allows you to do middleware requests and responses. So for instance, if you want to do an API and have that be part of your middleware, you can actually set that up real quickly. In fact, in the demo that we'll do later on, we'll actually be building out 4 different API calls that you'll be able to do, and you'll be able to see how you can use Express.js for that. And that in then turns allows you to be able to see how Express.js can help manage some of the routing of the different HTTP methods that you'd be using via URL. And then finally, it's just a great way of being able to dynamically test the work that you are developing. So you can actually build out a solution and test it right away in Express.js, have it in a single packet, and then once you get to a certain point, you can then check in the whole packet, even have it as part of your container, and then check that into your main project. And then if somebody else wants to then take on the work, they can then just pull that in. So let's kind of go step through a basic example. So here we actually have a full script for creating a simple hello world. And this includes installing Express.js, defining the ports it's going to run on, as well as a basic piece of code. So the first thing you want to do is actually go ahead and define how you want to install Express.js. And this is called the very first variable, which is requiring that Express be installed as part of Node Packet Manager. npm will then pull in the latest version of Express. If you need to define a specific version, of course, you can do that. In this example, we're just going to pull the latest one. And then we'll go ahead with the second line, which will then install Express. And when you do it once, you'll see how quickly it installs onto your local development machine. The next parameters are actually a callback function. So if something actually happens when you go to the website where we're going to run our web application, you want something to pop up. And in this instance, we'll say hello world will pop up. The third block is all about where you would actually go ahead and host your code. So in this one, you'll see that the server is going to listen to port 8081. So that's what that function actually there defines. And then you can either put in a specific host address. In the demo, you'll actually see how we define that for localhost, but you can actually then point this to a production host environment if you want. And then the final line here is a command that will actually send a script to your terminal window telling you that which port and which host that you are listening to. So let's see what that would look like. So here we have our terminal window, and we're actually able to then run the hello world.js script that we just wrote. And then once we do that, it'll actually then post that we have an example app listening at, and here we don't have a web domain address, but we do have the port 8081. And in our browser window, it says hello world. So that's a quick breakdown of Express.js. Now let's jump over and do a demo. So the first thing we want to do to get Express up and running on our system is we have to have Node.js installed. So we're just going to do a Google search to let you know where you can find Node.js. It's actually at nodejs.org. So we select that link, that will take us to nodejs.org. And there are two types of downloads. One is the current download, which has the latest features. And then there's a more stable version that if you're new to Node.js, I'd recommend you to download. Next, we want to find a text editor, and we're going to go with Visual Studio Code, or VS Code as it's known. It's an open source solution from Microsoft that runs across all the leading platforms. This will default to our Windows platform, but you can run it on Mac OS and Linux as well. I really like it. It's a great code editor. It comes with a lot of extensions, and it's open source. Next thing you want to do is, because we're going to be developing APIs, we want a way to be able to visualize those APIs quickly, and a great tool is a product called Postman. Again, open source, and so you can go out and go to postman.com. Top right hand corner, you'll see a bright orange download button where you can actually go ahead and download and install Postman, and that will allow you to be able to access all of your APIs that we're going to be creating in Express. You can actually use other tools such as Apigee as well for visualizing your APIs, but this one's just great to get you started. So let's go ahead and open up VS Code, and we want to go ahead and open a new folder where we're going to have our project. We're going to, just for our demonstration here, we're going to put this on the desktop. You wouldn't normally do this, but it will work fine here. And we're going to create a folder, and we're going to title the folder Node Express, and we'll select that folder. And that now becomes the root folder for our project in Visual Studio. We don't really need the welcome screen anymore, so we're going to get rid of that. And one of the things that is great about working with VS Code is that you can actually have the terminal window up and running as well. So let's go ahead and open that so it's running at the bottom of our screen, and this gives us a little bit of space. And the first thing we want to do is actually convert the folder we're in actually into a project running Node.js. So we're going to use npm init, and that will actually initialize the project. We have another video that explains how to use npm or Node Package Manager, and you can go ahead and find that in our library here. But as we go ahead and we do that, you'll actually see that it will create the default package Json file, which has the name of the folder is the default name of the package. But you can actually go in and edit any of these documents. We want to create a default file called index.js. This is where we're going to write most of our scripts that allow us to work with Node.js. And the first is writing a script that allows us to install Express, and we'll use the Node Package Manager to actually pull and install Express. You can default to specific versions of Express if you want. We're just going to go with the latest one, so we're just going to put in Express, and then we'll go down into terminal window and select npm install --save Express, and this will install Express so we can actually test out the code we're working on. And this will take just a moment to install. Great thing we're working with Node Package Manager is that once we've finished with our package here, we can actually wrap it all up and send it over to any other developer that we're working with, and then you can actually run the package and actually have exactly the same code installed. And there we are. We have everything installed and ready to go. We can see we actually have all of the modules installed. You see that we actually have Express installed as well. And we also want to then make this an app. And then we'll do app listen to port 3000. So this is by default, we're going to be running from our local host, which is HTTP server running on this test machine. And we're going to have Express for this project run on port 3000. And once we actually run the script, we'll actually post into the console window a piece of text saying server started on port 3000. So we're going to go ahead and save this file. A lot of Control S to save these files. So let's go into localhost in our web browser. So localhost colon 3000, and you'll see nothing has been reached. That's because we actually haven't done anything to initialize the script. So we want to come in and we're going to go node index.js and hit return. And as you can see, now we have a message in our console window. That means that, yep, there we go. We actually have everything up and running. So we can actually see that the service is running. Not a very pleasant message, so let's go ahead and change that. So let's change that to app get and acquire res. And so if it uses the get message, let's change what we'll print, and we'll type hello there, exclamation mark. And we save that, and we refresh the screen. Oh, nothing happened again because we didn't run the script. So let's go back in and we'll run the script node index.js. And now what you'll see is if we refresh, there we are. We have our new hello there message. All right, well, let's actually start building some APIs in this environment. So to be able to build the APIs, we want to be able to pull content. So we're going to actually create a new file called users.js, and we're going to go ahead and create a users JSON packet. And a JSON packet is essentially an array. Consider it like a small database. And in this array, we're going to have 4 objects. Each object is going to have 3 pieces of metadata. We have an ID, name, and email. And there'll be ID 1, 2, and 3. And then you'll see that the names will be John, Smith, and we'll make up a couple of others. Just kind of giving them arbitrary email addresses. This is just for our demo here. Let me grab this, copy it, and kind of speed up the script writing time. There we go. And let's just change what we need. One of the things that's nice with working with Visual Studio Code, VS Code, is there's lots of plugins. And so one of the default features is that if you select a variable, it'll actually look for the same variable in the script. So you can, if you need to, you can actually change them all at once. But we don't need to worry about that right now. We're just creating a JSON packet. So we have 4 items, ID 1, 2, 3, and 4 for John Smith and Jack and Chris. All right, so that's our array string, and we're going to then make sure that we can export that as users. So we can actually now, whenever we select the term users in our scripts, it'll actually pull in this packet. All right, looking good. Now let's go over to our main index.js file, and we're actually going to go ahead and we want to store where the API is going to be. So we're going to create a folder called routes, and then a subfolder called API. And then we'll call a file in there called users.js. So as we're updating our scripts, we know where to pull the data from. It's just a standard way of being able to pull out the values. So in here, we're going to say, in this instance, Express is required for our scripts. And we're going to also say that router within Express, router correct naming convention. And the script is case sensitive. We'll also want to create a value later on that will have a unique ID. So we're actually going to pull in a UUID package that will actually then allow us to install unique identifiers. So we can use Node Package Manager to install UUID. Again, this is a great example of how you can go from nothing to something very quickly with Node.js, because we installed Express, we installed UUID, and we're off to the races. So let's have users require the path for where our API is going to be located. All right, so let's do a basic get, which will be to pull the records. I'm going to have it pull all the records. So router.get, and we're going to require it to pull all of the records in the JSON packet that we created. So there should be 4 items that come back. Save that. Looks good. Make sure that users is consistent. There's our JSON packet. And yep, everything looking pretty good. All right, let's go back to index. And we're going to switch out this function here from just a generic get with a generic statement to actually being able to pull in the users. So we have to go app use express.json app.use URL encoded extended false app.use API users. So we're going to be pulling them all from the same location. Require, and where we have our API scripts. Okay. And then let's go ahead and open up Postman, because we're going to actually use Postman to actually show us what the results look like, because right now the results won't show up appropriately in our browser window. So Postman again is just a API management tool. If you used Apigee or other similar tools that are on the market, MuleSoft, you'll see it's very consistent. Again, this is open source, and what you want to be able to do is you can actually go to the path where the API is stored, and then you can use all the different types of commands within your environment to be able to test out the scripts. So let's go ahead and create a new project, a new request, and we're going to go with the default get, but there's actually quite a lot of different commands we can use, and these are just HTTP commands. And we're going to type in the request, and in this instance it's going to be, let's run our script first. Do we need to run our script? I think we're good. Let's make sure we're exporting the data correctly. Okay, so we want to run our script, so let's do node index.js, and that will run the changes that we just created. So we can now come over to get, we can select API, localhost :3000 /API users, and when we do, that brings back the JSON package with our 4 entry points. There we are, there's all 4 of them. So that's your first action. Now let's kind of get this a little bit tidier. Let's actually go in and see if we can filter by ID. So we're going to go in and we're going to modify our script. So it's going to be route, and then we're going to put in the filter, and in this instance it's going to be ID, which would allow us to be able to just put a backslash against the end of the URL string we just had and put in a number or a unique identifier, and then that will actually then allow us to pull in that unique record. We do pass the data. Okay, so found. I want to take the JSON and print it. So we're going to filter here against user ID and then publish the results. Else, if it doesn't work, then we'll just have a generic error message. We shouldn't see this though in the demos we're creating. This is just good practice. So save that. And let's go ahead and rerun our node index file against that folder. And now we can actually come in here and we do \1, and that will give us just one record. And we could change that to 2 or 100 in this instance. And if it's 100, we'll just get a bad request error message. There's 2. All right. So that's get. So we've been able to pull all of the records. We've been able to filter against one specific record, against a specific parameter. In this instance, it was ID. So let's go ahead and create a new user. And so what we're going to do for this is we're going to use the post command from HTTP to actually push and post data into the data source. The data source is our JSON packet, which means that we'll have to then push a new record into the JSON package using our array statements, because JSON is just essentially an array. And so we're going to post, and when we do this, we have to create a unique ID. So this is where we have to reference the UID. I'm going to do a v4 unique ID, which will be 4 groups of 4, so it'll be 16 characters. And then we'll have name and email we'll post. Okay, looks good. Okay, so if new user, and put .name and new user .email, and then we want to return the results. Okay. Right. And so users dot push. So we posted, which is a HTTP statement, and then pushing into the JSON packet array. Okay. Okay, it's looking good. All right, so I think we're good. Let's go ahead and rerun our script, node index.js. Now allows us to do that. So let's go over to Postman so we can actually connect to the URL. And we're going to change the HTTP statement to post, and get rid of that. We'll go back to users. Now, if we just do this, nothing's going to happen. So we actually have to go in and we have to update the body. This will be the content that will be passed through, and we're going to go through with a raw statement here. And we're going to do JSON. This will be, that's the packet we're sending. So let's go ahead, and the records we want to update, we only have to update 2, which is one is name and the second is email. We don't have to do an ID because we're using UUID to generate an automatic one for us. And we're going to create records for Steph, and her email address is steph@gmail.com. Yep, looking good. Okay, so let's go ahead and send that. We sent it. And if we look at the bottom, we can actually now see that we have 5 records. So a new one's been added. We have our unique ID at the top. And then we have name and email, which are the ones that we just created for Steph and steph@gmail.com. All right, so that's posting. Now the next thing we want to do is to update a record. So that means we need to select an ID and then be able to update the content. And for that, we're going to use the HTTP put command. So we'll use ID as our way to be able to filter. And then we'll be able to update against that filter. So construct found equals users, and then we'll have that going against users ID, so we know how to get the correct record, and then pass the record back onto the screen so we know what we're editing. So if found I want to update the user, and I'm going to go ahead, pull information from the body for what will be updated, and for each if user ID, and pass the integer. Okay. So this is our values to pass against the ID. And in this instance, we'll make sure that we're updating the values of username. So if we are updating user and we're just updating the username, we want to make sure that that's the value that gets updated. And then we also want to do user email. We don't want to update the ID because it's going to remain unique and consistent. Okay, and we're going to make sure that everything is pushed to the JSON package. And then we'll also have a message saying that the field has been updated in the JSON package. Okay. All right, so we'll run that script again. And looks good. So let's go to our folder. Let's change the HTTP post. Let's put it as get, just so we can see that we have all of the values in the array from the JSON packet. And now we want to select put, which allows us to update just one record. So let's go ahead and select one record. We'll select ID1. So we have one record. We can go ahead and for name, we can change this. So let's go ahead and change these. So now you see that the email has changed. So we have Steph as the new account. All right, our final API that we're going to create is to delete an account. And in many ways, it's actually a very basic API because all we're doing is we're grabbing the ID and then we're saying that all the associated records with that ID within that row, as it were, in the table, just to delete the whole row. And so we want to use, again, our ID as the unique value that we're pulling against. So we're going to, if users are found, and we're going to filter those users. We're going to do that filter against user ID. Pass that. And we'll then go and post a message to our JSON packet saying user deleted. And our generic message if things fail. Okay, let's save that, and we'll see. We're going ahead and we're just deleting the record now, and we're going to do it by filtering against the unique ID, and then it will then just eliminate that record, and we'll pass the message that it has been the account has been deleted. Okay. So we save that. Let's go run our script. Node index.js. We're good. Okay, let's come over here and we're going to show that we can pull any of the accounts. So let's just take one of them. One, I think that's good. So let's go ahead and we're going to change the HTTP command to delete. And we actually have to select an account, so we just do one. When we do that, it'll actually delete that record. And here we are. It says that the user has been deleted, and we now only have 3 records in the JSON packet. And we can pull all the records, and you'll see that there's only 3. So being able to pull all the records from a JSON package, we've been able to create a record, update a record, and delete a record. And we can just step through. So here's our JSON package that we created originally. Again, this is just an array. It's just a different way of setting up the array. And then we have our index files, which identifies what are the apps that need to be installed and where are the APIs going to be serviced out of. And that we're going to be doing this on the port 3000. Again, these are additional tools that we need to make sure that we have up and running in our script. And so the first script was to get all the records. The second was to filter against a user ID for just a specific record. And then for creating a record, we actually went in and we used the UID tool to create a unique identifier, and then we posted in the data for the new records. We did something similar with updating the record. We didn't have to update the user ID. We just had to update the values in the 2 fields that we needed to be updated. In this case, name and email. And the final step was to go ahead and delete a record. So these are all APIs that you can now pull into your own applications. So you can use them in web applications, or you can actually go ahead and use them in other applications, such as mobile applications, local applications, other scripts. And this really allows your application to become more scalable and more useful. So that's Express.js. Hope you found that very useful. We're going to be using Express.js in some of the other applications we're working with. Certainly when you start building out applications with Node, you start using Express.js quite a bit. So with that said, if you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. If you like this video, you should know that we actually make lots of videos like this, and you'll find those available in our library. You can also hit the subscribe button, so you actually can subscribe to the content we've created. And if you want to hit the notify button, that will actually let you know when new content has been posted. So with that, go ahead and build out your first Express.js applications.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.